This week on Art on the Air, our entire show is focused on the storied career of the Chicago-based sculptor Richard Hunt, whose numerous public works dot the Chicagoland region, the nation, and worldwide, including his work for the Obama Presidential Library. Our spotlight is on Lubeznik Center for the Arts with exhibition director Lora Fosberg, discussing LatinXAmericA exhibit's April 23rd Family Day.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart.
Welcome. You're listening to Art on the Air on WVLP 103.1 FM and Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM, our weekly program covering arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. I'm Larry Breckner of New Perspectives Photography, right alongside here with Esther Golden of The Nest in Michigan City.
Aloha, everyone.
We're your hosts for Art on the Air. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project grant through South Shore Arts and the National Endowment for the Arts. Art on the Air streams live at WVLP.org and is rebroadcast on Monday at 5 p.m., plus is also heard on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM every Sunday at 7 p.m., also streaming live at lakeshorepublicradio.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Radio's website as a podcast. Our spotlight interviews are also heard Wednesdays on Lakeshore Public Radio. Information about Art on the Air is available at our website, brech.com/AOTA. That's Brech, BRECH.com/AOTA. That includes a complete show archive, spotlight interviews, plus our show is available on multiple podcast platforms, including NPR One. Please like us on Facebook, Art on the Air, WVLP, for information about upcoming shows and interviews. And we'd like to welcome back to Art on the Air Spotlight the exhibition director, Lora Fosberg, for the Lubeznik Center for Arts. And she's going to talk about some of the events coming up in the main galleries and some of the things to look forward to, but the current exhibit that's running through June 11th. So, Lora, welcome back to Art on the Air Spotlight.
Welcome, Laura. Thanks so much for having me again. I really appreciate the attention that we can give to the Lubeznik Center.
Well, we'd like you to talk about the current exhibit, explain it maybe a little bit about what's going on with it, maybe some of the artists and everything. It's called the LatinXAmericAn exhibit. So please explain a little bit about that, who's doing it, and what's in it.
Oh, it's so good, you guys. LatinXAmericAn.
It's so good.
LatinXAmericAn comes from the DePaul Museum of Art in Chicago. So this is a show that traveled to us, which is very exciting because we don't do that very often. So it's really fun to work with such an esteemed institution. The show is incredible in so many ways. It's not just the art and the artists that are included, but it's the idea behind the show. And it's so rare for an institution to hold their hand up, wave it around, and say, we're doing a poor job. And that's exactly what the DePaul Art Museum did. They said almost 30% of Chicago is Latinx. Almost 18% of the population of the school at DePaul is Latinx. And in their collection, in their permanent collection at the museum, they only have about 2 or 3% Latinx artists. So they waved their arms around and said, we really need to rectify this situation. And what we're going to do is only show Latinx artists for an entire year. And not only that, but in our acquisitions program, which is where they purchase artwork to include in their collection, they'll only collect Latinx artists for that entire year. So that was the year of 2020. COVID hit. It continued until 2021. So they didn't just do it for 1 year. They did it for 2. Super exciting. Great artists, including Vic Muniz, who is internationally renowned, Enrique Chagoya, also an internationally famous artist, local artists such as Edra Soto, and all of the artwork really high quality, and each one addressing a different issue and from a different point of view, but all from Latinx artists.
Yeah, I really liked America's Wall. It was very not only timely, but I mean, to actually go there and do that, I mean, it just really was touching.
So she's just giving you a little hint, guys. She didn't tell you anything about what America's Wall is all about. You have to come see it for yourself.
Most definitely.
Maybe just give us a little bit, because this is radio and we can't show it. Just describe it just a little bit, so to tease them to get in.
There's this sheet hanging on the wall in the gallery with these stripes on it, and you kind of look at it and you're like, I have no idea what that is. It looks like minimalistic art. And then there's a video next to it, and wow, you start watching the video and it gives you clues as to what is happening. And these women go to the wall on the border, and they scrub the sheet against the wall and make an impression on it. And then that's what remains. That's evidence of what they did. But why they did it, you need to come to the Lubeznik Center to find out.
Yeah, it's very moving.
It's a great tease to get them in the door. So
like when you see images, people need to go to the museum to see the scope of it, because something like you show in your image on the website, an image, but in person it's gigantic. And so
yes. So the postcard for the exhibition, yes, like she said, it's this image, but you have no idea how three-dimensional that image is and how luscious and juicy the paint is. So quite thrilling to see that work in person.
And there's a special family day on Saturday, April 23rd, and they can see the exhibit through June 11th. So tell us about the family day.
So Family Day at the Lubeznik Center is really fun. We have tours for families, and then we also have projects. So moms and dads and kids and everybody can make artwork together. We supply all the materials, and we guide you through it, and it's really fun. You don't have to know anything about making art to come have fun and make artwork with us. And we'll have refreshments, and it's really fun, and it's really free.
And that's great. And you have other things coming up. I think you have the Michigan City School exhibit, and that's going to be in the NIPSCO. Tell us a little bit about how that is.
Yeah, that's all the kids from the Michigan City area schools are showing their artwork. So they've all been sort of juried into this show, and it's jam-packed with artwork. And I can tell you, some of it is so fantastic. Well, really, all of it is.
All of it is. And from floor to ceiling, just covered in art. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really, there's hundreds of pieces, and it's just mind-boggling to look at it. So I'd highly recommend it. And we also have our gala coming up. That's on June 23rd, Saturday night. And that's when we raise most of the money for the Lubeznik Center. And so if you would look on our website, lubeznikcenter.org, you'll find information about that so you can participate too. I can tell you, it's a really fun event, and lots of dancing and partying and great food, an auction, a silent auction, paddle raises, really a good time. So I hope that you'll all join us.
What exhibits, we have about 30 seconds left, you have coming down the pike, maybe like in the fall?
Well, the summer show is it's celebrating Monique Meloche 20 years of inclusivity and diversity. Monique Meloche is a Chicago gallery, and she was one of the first 20 years ago to represent artists of color. And now so many galleries are doing that, but she was the first, and we're going to celebrate her and her artists.
Well, that's coming this summer, and also we have Family Day Saturday, April 23rd for the current exhibit, LatinXAmericA. Lora Fosberg, Exhibition Director for Lubeznik, thank you so much for being on Art on the Air Spotlight.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
This is Pledge Week for your public radio station. And Art on the Air encourages our loyal listeners to support this station by making a monthly sustaining pledge so we may continue to bring you this great program. You're listening to Art on the Air, WVLP 103.1 FM, and on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM. Esther, would you please introduce our next guest on Art on the Air?
We are honored to welcome Richard Hunt, Midwestern legendary artist and sculptor. His honors and recognition started very early in his career, which spans 7 decades. Richard has had over 100 solo exhibits, is represented in more than 100 museums, and has created over 160 commissioned works. The chief curator of the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum declared Richard Hunt one of the most innovative artists of the 20th century. His accomplishments are so vast they would fill our entire program. Richard has received honors and recognition throughout his career. At 27 years old, in 1962, he was the youngest artist to exhibit at the Seattle World's Fair, and in 1971 was the first African-American sculptor to have a major solo exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. His work can be found in numerous museums, as well as both public and private collections, including the Art Institute of Chicago, the National Gallery, the National Museum of American Art in Washington, D.C., the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the Museum of Modern Art in New York. In 1968, he was appointed by President Lyndon Johnson to serve on the National Council of Arts. He's received many fellowships, prizes, and awards, and has memberships in the American Academy of Arts and Letters and the National Academy of Design. In 2009, Richard was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award by the International Sculpture Center. This year, he's receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award from Partners for Livable Communities in Washington, D.C. I'll highlight just some recent projects of sculpture: Light of Truth, commemorating the magnificent Ida B. Wells, and the commission of Bookbird by the Barack Obama Presidential Center. His sculpture, Hero Construction, stands as the centerpiece of the Art Institute of Chicago. His gift as an artist is matched by his kindness as a person, and Richard has inspired me personally with each of these aspects. A heartfelt aloha to you for joining us today, Richard.
Welcome, Richard.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
So we always like to start our interviews with your life story, though I think Esther just gave that. But tell us about your origin.
My origin.
What I like to say is how you got from where you were to where you are now, and kind of like where you grew up and all the influences, and go from there.
Yes. Well, I was born in Chicago. Actually, my family, my parents, I'm the first of 2 children. My parents were living in the Woodlawn area at the time, 1935. And so I was born there. Later on, my family moved to the Englewood neighborhood where I spent most of my growing years. But it's interesting. Here I am back in Woodlawn, working on sculptures that'll be part of the Obama Library and Center. And it turns out that Michelle, the wife, her family went to the same church my family went to just down the street from where we lived on Everhart Street, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, so it's been very interesting how things come around.
So, Richard, what was elementary school like? Was there an art program in elementary school?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, there were, at that point in time in the Chicago public schools, both art and music classes. And as a matter of fact, I was interested in music as well, and back and forth. I turned out to be better at drawing than I was at playing an instrument, so I moved on in that direction.
So, was there art in the household? How were your parents artistic? I know your father had the barbershop, and that's an art in itself.
Well, I would say so. Yeah. And so my parents were more involved in the performing arts, whether it was singing in choirs at church or various like glee clubs and situations like that. Since I got some good marks and remarks from teachers about my art, I got enrolled at what they call the junior school at the Art Institute on Saturdays and in the summers as I was growing up. And then, of course, later on, I ended up going there to college. But anyway, so.
I know we're lucky in Chicago by having a wealth of incredible museums right there. So did you, as a child, did you go to the Field Museum and the Art Institute and Science and Industry?
The aquarium and the, what's the one with the stars? And
Planetarium.
Planetarium, yeah. And of course, the good, one thing about the good old days is, as a matter of fact, that all the museums were free and open to the public.
I know.
But people like Marshall Field and all those people that supported those things, it gave way to obviously now having to pay tuition to go in. But of course, it's worth it.
I know. We understand that they have to pay all. There's so much upkeep in a museum. But I really love the days where I could pop into the Art Institute for a donation. So if I only had 15 minutes, I could pop in and see something and pop out. And can't really do that anymore with the fee structure.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the thing, these days, the thing to do is to become a life member, and then you can still come and go. Yeah,
that's true. So what? So in that early, so what were you doing at the junior school at the Art Institute? What did they focus on, and what did you gravitate toward?
Well, I started out being in a class where one did mostly drawing or painting. Then the thought was, well, I ought to try the sculpture class, and I got hooked in the sculpture class, and actually had a very fine teacher. One of the interesting things about that period of time is that, it was after World War II and whatnot. And there were a lot of, people, particularly Jewish people from Europe, who were artists and all, that came to various cities in the United States. And I had a teacher, Nellie Barr was her name, she and her husband had ended up in Chicago. He's a painter, and actually was chairperson of the painting department there. But anyway, so I got off to a good start with sculpture from a very sophisticated sculpture teacher.
And so were you, so was the sculpture in clay? Was it in metal at that point?
No, clay, clay primarily, building up things in clay, and then, figurative, beginning sculpture, you would say. But clay, then building up some things in plaster, making an armature and building up on it in plaster. That was what I was doing in what you call a junior school, and continued to do some of that in the college when I went there. But then actually at that point in time, the sculpture department had modeling and carving. They did not have, work in metal, but there was another course called metal craft. That is to say, you'd make things like candelabras or containers of some sort. And so I took those classes, and it got me started working in metal. And by the way, an important thing was that during that time, there was a show organized by the Museum of Modern Art called Sculpture in the 20th Century. and there was work of people like Julio Gonzalez, and then there were a group of British sculptors who started to work in metal. So I saw that work. That show opened at the Museum of Modern Art in New York and came to Chicago. And so I saw this work and got interested in the possibilities of metal in sculpture. And then, like I say, went on to take metal craft classes and then to develop on my own. I had the opportunity to set up a little studio in my parents' basement, like I was a streetcar. I mean, I could go downtown from Englewood, on the streetcar or the elevated train. But anyway,
did mom and dad ever visit the downstairs basement where you were creating things?
Well, they certainly did. Oftentimes they say, stop banging on that metal. We're trying to have something upstairs. But anyway, no, but it worked. Things, worked well. And there was this extra opportunity to do whatever sculpture I did at the Art Institute and then come home and make some more sculpture in the basement.
I see on your website that you also have some things that you've rendered on paper. Are those guidelines to your sculpture, or are those pieces in and of themselves in terms of art?
Well, there are some instances where I would make some drawings about the sculpture I was going to make. More often, there was separate things, and more often I would start cutting out a piece of metal, shaping it, and adding something to it. Yeah.
So what led to the early forays into the junkyard for parts? So where were you first, like those first sculptures, what metal were you using? And then what brought you to look for those bigger pieces at the junkyard?
Well, I mean, one saw in the pieces of metal in the junkyard, another opportunity, and it wasn't just the junkyard. One of the things is some of the early pieces were made out of parts of bumper guards. Automobiles in those days would have metal bumpers that, surrounded the front end and the back end.
Yeah, so many pieces of metal on the car are very elegant as they are. So it must have been quite inspiring.
Well, yes.
And so a lot of vehicles that wind up there have had accidents. So would that also be the natural bumps and bruises?
Yeah. That's what one could consider a metal forming process, So there'd be, some interesting details that would be part of these bumper parts that had been now what would happen? There were these places who would get the banged up bumpers, and they would cut them in half. Sooner or later, there'd be another one of the same kind of bumpers that was banged up on the other side, and those things would be welded together and then recoated. But then these other banged up parts would be scrapped, for sale. I mean, either the scrap picker would come pick them up, or I'd come and pick them up.
Or you would. So logistically, did these pieces come back to your parents, to your studio at your parents', or did you have an alternative studio that you were collecting all these pieces?
In the beginning, I had this studio in my parents' basement. Okay, so so well, then a variety of things happened in between. I mean, that is to say, graduated from the Art Institute. I had a foreign traveling fellowship. I spent time in Europe, and as a matter of fact, devoted myself to making things out of clay and all that. I would get cast in the foundry there, which was a thing that I hadn't done before. That is to say, have access to a foundry.
That was in Europe?
Pardon?
Was that in Europe?
Yes, right in Florence. Yeah, and I traveled around in Europe, mostly in Italy, but France, Spain, England.
So were you like when you were in Florence? Were you in one place and you could then use that studio? And
yeah. There was a building along the Lungano Guicciardini where they rented out spaces. Well, not only to artists. I mean, a big building, a former castle of some kind, you might say. That then had rental spaces, and so I rented space there and worked on stuff, and then went to a foundry there and had some things cast.
Jumping ahead, Richard, you've had many professorships at various institutions. And I guess what's your advice to a young person that's interested in going into sculpture? I mean, what would your recommendations on what to study, how to study, depending on that, and in art in general? Well, I guess like for sculptors, what hands-on things do they need to understand about the medium they work in? Like metal is not something that you can just grasp instantly. So what kind of other things should they understand about, like, let's say, working in metal or working in different types of medium? What would be your advice to them about learning things?
Well, I would say I think people who, I mean, there are people who take some art classes and like art. I mean, they don't necessarily become artists. They may go on to be doctors or lawyers or whatever, but they might make a little sculpture or paint a little landscape every now and then. But then if you really want to be a sculptor in particular, you work with you get information from a teacher. You become friends with others who are wanting to be sculptors as well, and kind of goes on that way.
So, Richard, with your maquettes, were they always done in clay, or did you do any paper 3D models as well? Because sometimes I do mine out of paper before I transfer to another material.
I did a little bit of that, but what I came to do more often was to pour out sheets of material. I'm just having one of these senior moments. The material that,
like plaster or
pardon?
Like plaster or
no, not plaster. The wax.
Oh yes.
You'll have sheets of wax that you can use like you'd use a sheet of metal. I mean, that is to say, you can cut something out of it, bend it, then heat the two edges of the wax together into a form, or have several of these sections that would get cast and you might weld together after they were cast.
Yeah, wax is wonderful. So for the metal, Richard, your sculptures achieve a weightlessness that sort of defies the material. They feel like they're about to take flight or break through the surface of water. They're kind of reaching or moving or ascending. Is that part of what's going through your mind when you're designing some of these sculptures? Because it really, they don't have the sense of being heavy like metal. They just have this beautiful freedom about them.
Well, yeah. The idea is to use the metal in a way that it suggests the freedom, the openness, the movement that you're able to do by forming it in various ways. And so it's interesting. You can have a piece of metal that's anywhere from from something thin to something, depending on the scale of it, something a little thicker, if it's going to be a large thing outdoors, or a different kind of thing that's on a coffee table. I mean, so you form metal of different thicknesses, based on, what they are and where they're going.
You're listening to Art on the Air with sculptor Richard Hunt on WVLP 103.1 FM and Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM. This is Pledge Week for your public radio station, and Art on the Air encourages our loyal listeners to support this station by making a monthly sustaining pledge so we may continue to bring you this great program.
So with and that sort of makes me think about the outdoor installations. Like, so when a museum or, I don't know, the works go out in public, do you provide guidelines for the perpetuity of taking care of these sculptures, or is it up to the ultimate purchaser?
The end user, so to speak.
Yes.
Yeah. Well. I mean, I will certainly, suggest ways of, maintaining them, and whether that happens or not. I mean, once the sculpture gets put in place, I get paid for it. It's up to them. Whether somebody else or they might call me back to work on a sculpture that maybe needs a little touch up.
So what is your design process then? I know it must be different for, like, at this point, do you have any free time just to walk around and do something for yourself? Or are you pretty much consumed with commissions?
Well, no, I have, I have a number of commissions, to do, but I still spend some time just making sculptures that I want to make, which are just as a kind of additive process. You start with a form and add something to it. Sometimes one of the things about metal too, direct metal, is that you can decide, well, I'll take that part off and do it a little differently, and you do that, and it doesn't look like that was what happened. I mean, it's not like having some stone or something where you can't you couldn't do that. You take it away and it's gone. Whatever parts of the stone you take away.
So when you got that phone call from the Obamas, did they just say that this is going to be for this part of this building, or did you have guidelines, or were you given like artistic license to do what you felt you wanted to do?
Well, actually, I would say it comes pretty close to being artistic license. I mean, there's sort of a place, at the entrance to the library. So I mean, the idea of the place and interacting with a landscape architect. Well, you have this idea where it ought to be. We might go back and forth a little bit, but basically, yeah, it's coming to see the space and seeing how the scale, the attitude of the piece gets developed in relation to that.
And then again, your other recent one, the Ida B. Wells. So how I had read that went through many different iterations, I guess. And so what was that process?
Well, as a matter of fact, it was a long, drawn out process. Not so well. A couple of factors. I was asked if I would be interested in doing something. I said yes, and then it took the committee a while to, raise money for it, and several ideas came and went, during that process, during the time that went by. But it was, quite an opportunity, a space in what is now a park, which used to be where there was this public housing, and around the park is new housing, condominiums, etc. So anyway, it's something that interested me as part of the rebuilding of a neighborhood.
As you're designing it, what are the significance then of the pieces? Because isn't it's on three legs?
Well, the idea was So there are these sort of legs or columns that the sculpture kind of goes up into the air, like suggesting ascendance and stuff like that. And then on the sides of the columns, there are plaques that have information about Ida B. Wells. An image of her in relief and some quotations from her, with the idea being that as time goes by, there'll be people, walking through that park who wouldn't know Ida B. Wells. I grew up knowing about Ida B. Wells. Just in terms of, the time I was born and the time she was in her heyday, and of course they named this public housing after her that ended up being torn down along, used to be South Parkway, then it was King Drive. So anyway, to me, it was interesting to be involved. I had friends that lived in the Ida B. Wells homes. And anyway, so it was an interesting project.
Richard, one thing we've been asking our guests is during this pandemic, how's that influenced you? Was it a creative time for you? Was it sort of thing? So tell us a little bit about how COVID actually influenced you living personally and creatively.
Well, I have done very well. That is to say, I got my shots. I didn't have any problems. And the people who helped me in my studio, we've all survived it without succumbing to it. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, at least when we aren't using our hands to form things. But I would just feel lucky, fortunate to be able to keep on, got my shots and all, but
so do you have what are you working on presently?
I'm working on about 4 different pieces for private clients, and then I am getting together the work for the Obama, like I'm going to start in earnest working on the piece that will go in like the gateway to the Obama library. That is to say, the Chicago Public Library, that's part of the Obama presentation there. There will be then the high-rise building that contains all this memorabilia and stuff, and the Chicago Public Library that's adjacent to it that'll have more Obama material.
So, Richard, how tall is Bookbird? Or how tall will it be?
Well, about 10 feet tall.
Oh, okay.
Richard, like your creations are probably like children, so it's hard to pick a favorite. But do you have a favorite piece out there, whether it's public art or something else that you say, yeah, that's my absolute best or favorite?
It's hard to pick one, but I like the piece that I was able to do. Is like a mural kind of thing on the State of Illinois building, the old State of Illinois building on the west side of LaSalle Street.
Well, let me ask you this too. I like seeing some of your work that's suspended from the ceiling. When you're conceptualizing that, and of course you have to figure out the actual engineering to it as long as designing it. What goes into that process of something that's actually going to be flown or hung?
Working with a structural engineer, structural engineers, architects. There's this back and forth, with how a piece like that's on a wall hanging from a ceiling or whatever. Oftentimes, like the building would be in the design process, but if we wanted to support the sculpture, we have to thicken up the beams or something like that. So there's this dialogue about what it will take. How one can attach it, and what the engineers, architects have to do to give it enough stability.
Part two of the question, I asked it before, but we got sidetracked, is so when you're advising someone about sculpting, whether it's metal, what type of skills should they understand like that? It's one thing to say, I can draw this and create this on paper in my mind, but like metallurgy, things like you just spoke to, but what other things would you recommend someone when they're interested in sculpting, whatever the medium may be?
Well, I think you start where you start. That is to say, first, whether it's clay, plaster, wood, stone, whatever, you make something that's the size of a bread basket or something like that. I shouldn't say that. Other people don't use bread baskets anymore. But anyway, there's a coming to understand what it is to work with certain materials. Then if they get developed in larger scale, need some support through the interaction of the art with the architecture, then that's that's another thing where you come to in dialogue with architecture and or both, to prepare these things to be mounted on a wall or hang from a ceiling.
So, Richard, do you remember where you were when you heard that the Museum of Modern Art had purchased Arachne when you were just a junior at the Art Institute? And what was that like?
It was a real, both a surprise, a delight. As a matter of fact, at that point in time, the Art Institute used to have, I think, either annual or biennial exhibitions of artists in Chicago and vicinity. Within a 50-mile radius of Chicago, people could submit things to a jury who would choose them to be in this show at the Art Institute. So the way things were, I entered a piece in this, to be considered for the exhibition, and there was a member of the staff of the Museum of Modern Art who was invited to be one of the what do you call them? Not critics, but one of the people to validate. Well, this should go in the show. But anyway, so my work was chosen to be in the show, and then the person from the Museum of Modern Art, thought it was very interesting and decided to purchase it for the Museum of Modern Art, so that after the exhibition at the Art Institute, it went there.
How thrilling.
Yes, it was.
You're listening to Art on the Air with sculptor Richard Hunt on WVLP 103.1 FM and Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM. This is Pledge Week for your public radio station, and Art on the Air encourages our loyal listeners to support this station by making a monthly sustaining pledge so we may continue to bring you this great program. Do you have a favorite metal to work with? I see you have things in bronze, corten, stainless steel. Do you have a favorite metal that you like to work in?
Well, it's a toss-up between stainless steel and bronze, I would say.
And you have to take into consideration now, not so much with stainless steel, like the aging effect on those things also.
Well, I mean, both the bronze and the stainless, unlike, say, mild steel or some metals that would decay. Both the bronze and the stainless, they don't, under any normal circumstances, don't decay. I mean, maybe if, it'd have to be something catastrophic that would come along to, really ruin them. Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, like copper, how it goes through its transition when they put copper things out, and it goes through, and that's mostly for building finishings. But yeah. Right.
But the thing is, okay, so it has a certain kind of color, then it's out, then it turns green. I mean, if you want to keep it copper colored, then you've got a maintenance thing. But I mean, it's not going to deteriorate. But it's yeah. Well, one of those things where, like I say, it depends on how you want it to look. Whether you want to keep cleaning it up every so many months, or if you just
want it to go like the lions at the Art Institute.
Pardon?
Or have it turn into like the lions at the Art Institute.
Yeah, they don't look too bad.
They don't. Well, your sculptures can be seen all around Chicago. And you have like 9 or 10 sculptures around the Chicagoland area, I think. I know. I want people to look you up and go take a tour of your sculptures.
I think that's a good idea. As a matter of fact, yeah.
Well, we'll say this again at the end, but you can find out more information about our guest at Richard Hunt's Studio. That's richardhuntstudio.com. And you can find them there, and you can see he has a Chicago studio and a Benton Harbor studio also. How do you spend time between the two of those?
Well, actually, I don't spend as much time as I'd like in Benton Harbor. In the beginning, I thought, I'll go there on weekends. Well, I go there some weekends, but right now they've gotten further between. But it's been good to work over there, and I've done a lot of projects in and around Benton Harbor, St. Joe, and then further up in Michigan's various other communities there. Yeah.
Is the gallery still opened in Benton Harbor?
Yes, it is. Yeah. There's an artist in residence caretaker, who's there to have people come in and look around.
Is there a project you would like to work on that you haven't, like something you haven't created, and this is outside of the work you've already discussed, but something you say, I really want to make, and whatever that is. Do you have an idea for that?
Or a place?
I mean, there are pieces I would like to make on a certain scale. I mean, it's not like I would say I want this piece to go in that particular place, but some pieces that have. I'm interested in suggesting flight in some of my work, and to do something on a fairly large scale that seemed to be taking off into space is something if I just had time to just go over there and work on that, I'd do it, and I probably will at some point. Yeah.
Well, all of your pieces do achieve that. Even your works on paper, the lithographs, they all feel the movement in them is palpable. Same with like the metal, like what you can do with metal and the feeling that gets imparted through your design is phenomenal because you do follow those lines, and ascending is like the word. So sometimes I feel like it feels like air, but it also feels like breaking through water. There's always like some sort of
good. Yeah. No, good point. Yes. Through air and water. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
And can people come to your Chicago studio and see your work there?
Most
It'd be nice if they give a call.
Most definitely.
Or they can knock on the door. Yeah.
That's at 1017 West Little Avenue in Chicago, but you can also find that online. We're about ready to wrap up in a couple of minutes, but tell us a little bit about what you plan to do that you do outside of sculpting. What do you do for enjoyment?
The one answer is more sculpture.
More sculpture, right?
On the other hand, I like music, and in particular, early music, Baroque music. And one of the problems with that is, like, I have painter friends, they can paint and be listening to music. But if I'm hammering or grinding or something, you can't listen to the music and hammer on the metal. So, but anyway, at the end of the day or at lunchtime, I might turn on a little music. Yeah.
And what music do you like to listen to?
Like I say, mostly music from the Baroque period. Well, and in particular the music of Handel. But all the others, Bach.
So Richard, from those beginning times, did you use, because we never thought about it back in the 60s, ear protection or masks or anything. Did you start out protecting yourself in any of those ways?
Well, yeah. Certainly when I started to work with metal, now people too might use whatever if they're carving stone or something, because if you carve it or sand it, you can get little particles and there's more attention being paid to just taking care of yourself.
I know. Well, we didn't really think
about
about health concerns back in the 60s and 70s. So.
Right. No, but as a matter of fact, it's a good thing to consider,
Well, we just need to about wrap it up here in just a minute, Richard. So we want people to know where they can find you in Chicago, and that's 1017 West Lil Avenue in Chicago. And you can also find out information at richardhuntstudio.com, where you can locate your things and also see your public works, some of which are all over the city that we have. So
Right.
we appreciate you coming on Art in the Air. That was sculptor Richard Hunt, and a Chicago-based sculptor. He's been around for quite some time. He has more than 125 parks and school public areas across the nation where he's had his work shown. Richard, thank you so much for being on Art on the Air.
Richard, it's been an honor speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
This is Pledge Week for your public radio station, and Art on the Air encourages our loyal listeners to support this station by making a monthly sustaining pledge so we may continue to bring you this great program. You've been listening to Art on the Air, and we'd like to thank our guests this week on WVLP 103.1 FM and Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM, our weekly program covering arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. Art on the Air is heard every Friday at 11 a.m. and rebroadcast Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP. Art on the Air streams live at WVLP.org and is rebroadcast on Monday at 5 p.m. Plus is also heard on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM every Sunday at 7 p.m., also streaming live at lakeshorepublicradio.org and is available on Lakeshore Public Radio's website as a podcast. Our spotlight interviews are also heard Wednesdays on Lakeshore Public Radio. Thanks again to Greg Kovach, WVLP station manager, and Tom Maloney, vice president of radio operations for Lakeshore Public Radio. Our theme music is by Billy Foster with a vocal by Renee Foster. Art in the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project Grant and the National Endowment for the Arts. Underwriters for Art in the Air, Walt Breidinger of Paragon Investments and Mary Levan, Arts Patron. Art in the Air is always looking for financial support. We'd like to thank our current supporters. If you're looking to support Art in the Air, Esther and I especially would invite you to become an underwriter of this program in particular. We have information on our website at breck.com/AOTA. You can find out support information there. So don't just be an Art on the Air listener. Become a supporter or underwriter in whatever amount you're able to do so we continue to bring you this great content and this great local programming. And like I say every week, don't give till it hurts. Give till it feels good. And you'll feel so good about supporting Art on the Air. Information about Art on the Air is available at our website, breck.com/AOTA. That's Breck, BRECH.com/AOTA. That includes a complete show archive, spotlight interviews, plus our show is available on multiple podcast platforms, including NPR One. Please like us on Facebook, Art on the Air, WVLP, for information about upcoming shows and interviews. If you're interested in being a guest or sending us information about your arts-related event or exhibit, please email us at aota@breck.com. That's aota@breck, BRECH.com, or contact us through our Facebook page. Your hosts were Larry Breckner and Esther Golden, and we invite you back next week for another episode of Art on the Air.
Aloha, everyone. Have a splendid week.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the Air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the Air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show